And then, we'll start off with the pledge to the flag and Chair Natoli had it, right? Supervisor Natoli, could you please? Pledge.
Former Supervisor Natoli. County citizen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm just trying to put you back to work.
Supervisor's gonna have something to say about that.
All right, that brings us to our roll call, man.
Chair Mashburn,
Here.
Vice Chair Winternitz is absent. Board Member Natoli, I suppose. How do I say that now?
This member, yeah, that's fine, yeah. Here. That's gotta be here.
Supervisor Burgess. So Supervisor Patty, we see that you're here. Are you at the 44 North San Joaquin address?
That's correct.
Excellent. Supervisor Patty.
Present, thank you.
Supervisor Provenza. Absent. Board Member Pearl. Here. Board Member Vogel. Here. And Board Member Gunn. Here. Board Member Matsumoto. Here. We have a quorum.
Awesome. And then we have any introductions or special
I'm
introductions?
sorry. I'm so bad. So we have some liaison advisors here today. I see Marge Kohler and Bruce Blodgett.
Hello.
And do we have any other liaison advisors here or online? Any ex officio members? Representatives? Okay. Let's move forward.
All right, ready to rock and roll. That brings us to public comment. And do we have any public comment for the group today, either online or in the room? That brings us to the consent calendar. And does anybody on the board or in the audience have something they'd like to discuss on the consent calendar? Have both for discussion? Being none, I'd be looking for a motion.
Move to approve consent calendar?
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Could we have a vote, ma'am? I guess it's got to have to be roll call because.
It's all roll call, yeah. 'Cause we're hybrid. Chair Mashburn,
Yes.
Board Member Natoli,
Aye, but I should note an abstention, I think, on the minutes from July 26th, since I was not in attendance. I know Supervisor Hume was here, so I would vote aye on the remaining portions I
Okay.
have staying on.
we're gonna have to separate the vote out.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So let's go ahead and vote on the all hands, the board meeting minutes. And then we'll do a second vote on the other items on the agenda. So I'm gonna start over. Chair Mashburn.
Aye.
Minutes only. Natoli is an abstain. Supervisor Patty.
Yes.
Board Member Pearl. Board Member Vogel. Abstain. Board Member Udine.
Aye.
Board Member Matsumoto.
Abstain.
We don't have enough votes, so that motion does not carry. We can bring it up at the next meeting, and this has happened previously, and because of the number of votes that we have, we just made notations and left it at that. So let's go ahead and vote on the additional 3 items on the consent calendar. Chair Mashburn.
Aye.
Supervisor or Board Member Natoli. Supervisor Patty.
Yes.
Board Member Pearl.
Aye.
Board Member Vogel.
Aye.
Board Member Udine.
Aye.
Board Member Matsumoto. Yes. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Motion carries. And can I get the motion and the second again? I'm so sorry. Who made that motion?
I made the motion.
Seconded. Thank you so much.
Here's the executive officer's report.
You're up, sir.
Morning again, everyone. Happy New Year and welcome to the first Delta Conservancy Board meeting of 2024. It's great to see you all here. I do just want to recognize Supervisor Natoli. Welcome back. It's great to have you back. You were with us for so many years, and it's great to see you back with us. Sadly, Supervisor Natoli informed me that Larry Roostall, our supervisor with San Joaquin County, has passed away. He was actually one of our first board members 12 years ago and served us for many years and was just a great partner. And so it's just sad to hear this passing. So I wanted to share that with you. Okay, so moving on to the report. As always, I'll kind of run through. Please feel free to ask any questions. First item is that it's Form 700 compliance time. The forms are actually due April 2nd this year. You can find the form, fill them out electronically on the Fair Political Practices Commission's online portal. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out to Jenny Howe in the back corner here if you need any assistance on our end. Moving on to the Delta Drought Response Pilot Program, the DRIP program. The Conservancy has closed out the majority of the 2023 grants, year 2023, except for the remaining 6 that will continue to utilize the practices through September 2026, with UC Davis continuing to monitor the efficacy of those practices. The staff is actively working on the report and technical analysis for the 2023 DRIP program. Should be available later this week. Couple words about our budget for this year. As we all know, the state's facing a significant budget deficit. Part of the solution has been to pull back general fund and request that agencies limit their non-essential spending. For us, that means that the wildfire funding that we had, about $6 million, we've been asked not to spend that. It's likely that not be in the governor's budget. And then, of course, we're just doing everything else that we need to do by reducing travel and conferences and training and other expenditures. We're hopeful at this time that there'll be no additional cuts, but that's. So really looking forward to this item, administrative updates. So you all remember that at the beginning of the year, we always take time to look at our strategic plan, which was approved in 2022 and runs through 2027. We do that by taking a look at the previous year, celebrating the previous year. And then we ask the board to consider a draft of the implementation plan for the upcoming year, which you'll see on agenda item 9 later in the agenda today. But I'm very excited that we now have our first electronic annual report that's been posted to the web. And it's extremely nicely done. I want to thank the staff and the board for all the hard work that's summarized in the report, and staff for all their contribution to the report. But a special thanks goes out to Hope Miller, who really designed and produced this report and made it a very compelling document. So we're going to take a few minutes now, and Hope's going to run you through it. And take it away, Hope.
Thank you so much. So today I'm going to be presenting on our 2023 annual report, which, as Campbell said, is our first ever annual report. You can get to it from the homepage of our website. We've also been promoting it on social. There he is. Promoting on social, so you may have seen it there. Big thanks to Supervisor Mashburn for providing that lovely introduction there. We made it with ArcGIS story maps, and because there are some interactive features and maps, it's best viewed on a desktop computer or a tablet. However, it works perfectly fine on mobile. And you will notice some similarities in structure to the strategic plan and implementation plan, but we really made this with the public in mind so they could understand the work that we do. We have some quick at-a-glance data from last year. And now we're really getting into the meat of the report, which is grouped by goals set in our strategic plan. Our service area, I really want to highlight some of the things under goal 1, which is enhancing the ecological conservation, restoration, and climate adaptation in the Delta and Suisun Marsh. A big part of that last year was the nature-based solutions funding that the board approved. Here are the boats that Web tracked. And if you scroll down a little bit more, we closed out some projects and celebrate that as well. Here's Campbell and Secretary Crowfoot and others marking the completion of habitat and drainage improvements at the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area back in October. And then, as I mentioned before, we have some interactive maps sprinkled throughout. So these are all of the projects under our ecological restoration and climate adaptation program. And if you click on a marker, you can get some quick information. There's also a legend here where you can see the full list and click through that and see all of our projects under each program. In addition to funding and closing out projects, we also put on some events last year. So information about the Delta Invasive Species Symposium, which we'll hear about more later from my colleague Rachel. Delta Restoration Forums, we had 2 of those last year. And so then getting into goal 2 has information, our Delta drought response pilot program, which you guys are all familiar with. Again, some more maps. This is for water years 2022 and 2023. So it's a comprehensive look of all of our projects throughout that program. Also fish-friendly farming, there's a nice video there. Goal 3 covers our community enhancement program, which funds things like the restoration of the 1883 Parksburg Schoolhouse. Some of you may have been on that site visit last year or went to the house last year. Delta sign plan, of course, that we're working on with the Delta Protection Commission. Then goal 4 is more my realm with the outreach and education, information on Delta Week. We had 2 waterway cleanups last year at Brandon Island and Sherman Island. And also some educational opportunities with students. Goal 5 covers DEI work, administration and operations, which is a very broad category. A lot of important stuff there, everything from timekeeping to coordinating our site visits, like the very fun boat tour in October. We love that. And then just wrapping up with a timeline of kind of the greatest hits from the last year. So I really want to thank the Delta Protection Commission and the Stewardship Council for providing photos of this. That was a big help. Happy to take any questions.
Don't have any questions, but I got to tell you, I sit on 34 different boards and commissions. Almost everybody puts out some type of document that's an end of year document, whether it's their annual report or whatever it might be. That's one of the best ones I've seen in a lot of years that I've been doing this. That is very well put together. I especially love those interactive maps. That really rocks.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, you want to just scroll to the top desktop that just shows that overarching first desktop dashboard.
Oh, the at a glance.
Yeah, that one. Just as you can see. It just gives a really quick overview of all the work that's been done. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, again, Hope, thanks for all your work on that. It's valuable. Please do feel free to share it as widely as you can.
Campbell, just a question. So is it just online or is there a paper copy available for folks?
Just online.
It's online. So, okay. So we've got to know, we'll look for it and find it.
It's very prominently displayed on our homepage though. So
It is. Okay.
easy to get to.
Okay, we'll keep it up there.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
All right, I'm going to move on to the Conservancy request for proposals. Further down. So we entered into an interagency agreement with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, $150,000 last year to re-energize the planning for Frank's Tract. Talked a little bit about that here. Frank's Tract, they did an exhaustive plan effort, involved the local community, but ultimately came out with a project description that's extremely expensive and unlikely to be constructed. So this effort will bring those stakeholders back together and it will try to meet all the objectives, but with a reduced project. And it will do more detailed value engineering and cost analysis. So we're going to put the RFP out here shortly and hoping that we'll be through that. And by spring of this year, we'll let the contract to a facilitator to help us do that project. I've got a brief update here on the Delta Conveyance project. We're going to have an update from Janet Barbieri later on in the agenda, but I think we're all aware the TWR certified the EIS, the EIR, and they're moving forward with the engineering design and permitting. Nutria eradication, you have the latest numbers, but I just received an update that's more specific to the Delta. Valerie Cook, so I'm going to share a little bit of reading here. So they currently have over 600 active cameras stationed throughout the Delta, mostly located in the North Delta, North Suisun and Sherman Island area. On Sherman Island, they took 24 nutria between October of last year and October of 2022 last year through September of this year. And then just over the last month, they've had a couple additional detects and taken 3 more adults off of Sherman. So we are seeing more nutria in the Delta. They've taken 178 nutria from Suisun Marsh, which is a huge increase in the we're in Suisun Marsh. And the thinking is that the nutria sort of got behind the line, as it were, and the marsh is just really great habitat. It's interconnected habitat. They have a lot of opportunity to move around and establish. So they're waiting for the end of duck hunting season, which will be here in a couple weeks. They've been getting great cooperation from all the landowners in the duck clubs because they all recognize the impact it can have. So we'll get another update at our next. Moving on to Delta Science, I'm going to skip down to the Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee. Wanted to share that we had our second Delta Restoration Forum on November 2nd last year, and we took over the basement of the Ride Hotel. It was a great event. We had 20 presenters, 20 projects, planning projects, implementation projects spread out throughout the area in sort of an open house format. There were over 70 people that came in and interacted with these people to get a better understanding of everything that's going on. It was a great event. We really intend, one of the major objectives here is to try to get more Delta actual community members to come and engage and understand the restoration. We would certainly like to get more of that participation, and we'll continue to try that as we continue to put on these forums. We'll probably do one. I also just wanted to mention that the next Restoration Forum meeting is actually scheduled for March of this year. Sorry, Restoration Subcommittee. So it's Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee. There's a Restoration Subcommittee. Restoration Subcommittee does the Restoration Forum. So a lot to remember. Okay. So Delta Interagency Invasive Species Coordination Team, they put on their 5th biennial Delta Invasive Species Symposium on 30th. Very well attended. Rachel Wigginton, who co-hosted and helped put on that event. Information on that later on in the agenda. 2 quick media mentions. Capitol Morning Report did an overview of the Secretary Speaker Series on the Delta. That was a really fun speaker series, and it's that link. I actually got to speak on the series. So and then Maven's Notebook republished a press release announcing board activities in October, where we approved $13 million for solutions projects. So moving on, there were no staff board directives to staff the last meeting. There's no correspondence. So I'll pause here for any questions on program before I turn it over to Jessica.
Just one question on the nutria situation. Like, we've invested over $9.5 million. Is there like a sustainable funding source for this that's not dependent upon Delta Conservancy grants?
I think Sarah has the latest information.
So I talked with Valerie yesterday, and she had mentioned that the state had given general funds for the nutria program to support, I think, 17 plant positions, or so pretty substantial. So they're getting support general fund for this program.
Okay, thank you, Jessica.
Hi, Jessica Allen, Administration Supervisor. I'm reporting on the budget expenditure report, which is page 16 for agenda item 5 attachment 2. Budget freeze is big for us. I'm laughing because I look at our budget and we have less than 40,000. Talk about the items, so we are not going to save the state here, but we're going to try. We do have a small budget when it comes to our general items. They put on January 10th, the governor around there, and when they do that, they update 23, 24. And they add in all of the adjustments for salary and wages. They also rolled all of our local assistance here. So though our budget and our last report, our budget like for the whole and total was in the $9 million, now it's $48 million. So they rolled all of that NBS funding into our funding still resides in the previous years, but we are spending it in the current year. So just wanted to point that out. We are currently on track with all of our spending at this time. Is there any questions? Okay, thanks.
That brings us to our ecosystem restoration and climate adaptation grant program update.
Good morning, board members. My name is Angie Shakya. I'm environmental. Today I'll be presenting agenda item 6, the ecosystem restoration and climate adaptation or ERICA grant program update. This is on page 17. So to start with an update on approved projects, 4 nature-based solutions or NBS projects have been awarded, and those grant agreements are being developed. As seen on the funding table at the bottom of page 17, NBS funding is fully allocated. So moving on to page 18, NBS 01, the web track project proposed by Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, was awarded funding last year, and the grant agreement should be executed in February. Since the award of funding, Metropolitan has begun planning activities and initiated technical studies using share. So for this project, planning for rice is anticipated to take significantly less time than the wetland restoration, and therefore the rice project can be implemented sooner to provide near-term greenhouse gas emission and subsidence benefits on a portion of the island. So it's anticipated that Metropolitan will complete their CEQA compliance documentation for the rice project this spring, and therefore they'll be eligible for phase 2 implementation funding when this board makes CEQA a responsible agency. And so we'll keep you updated on next steps and in that process. The ERICA program has 18 active grants, 1 in climate access and resource funding and 17 in Proposition 1. Specific project updates for these can be found in the new information section of each active project starting on page 19. And as a highlight, there are 3 amendment requests that have come through since the last board meeting. Firstly, Agricultural Natural Resources Trust requested an extension to their funding term for the Mellow Jensen Sandhill Plain Preserve acquisition project. This was a 4-month extension that was deemed as time sensitive, so that was approved by our executive officer. And additionally, 2 amendment requests were approved earlier this morning as consent calendar items. First one of those was a scope change for the Grizzly Slough floodplain restoration project. And the second was a term extension for the San Joaquin River floodplain restoration and floodwater enhancement project at Vanta Carbona phase 1. And then sort of to wrap up, we had 2 Proposition 1 projects that were completed during the 4th quarter of last year. Those are the Stone Lakes Restoration Project with Just Unlimited and the Elk Slough Fish Passage and Flood Improvement Planning Project with Reclamation District 999. We're working with those grantees to complete their project closeout, and we'll have final reports for you hopefully at the next one. And per our standard practice, final reports for all closed projects. Thanks for your time.
Questions? Any hand raised online either? All right.
Just public comment. Sure.
Oh, yeah, I was just looking up online and asking if there was anything online. I don't see any hands raised. Yeah, so we're good. Thank you, ma'am. That brings us to our community enhancement grant program update.
Good morning, board members. My name is Martha Ozenoff, and I'm the Conservancy's Community Project Supervisor. I'm here to present agenda item 7, the Community Enhancement Grant Program Update, which starts on page 34 of your agenda packet. The Community Enhancement Program is funded through a $12 million allocation for Proposition 68 and 2 general fund allocations of climate access and resource or CAR funds, totaling $11.4 million. The program accepts applications on an ongoing basis and is actively seeking proposals. At present, we are aware of several applicants working on their proposals. Currently, there is $4.4 million available in Proposition 68 funding and $17,000 available in CAR funds. However, we are considering awarding $715,000 in Proposition 68 funds today, which would lower our available amount to $3.7 million. I'm happy to report that we have 12 executed community enhancement grants. The projects are detailed on pages 34 to 40 of your agenda packet. but to provide a quick highlight, the Freeport Delta Gateway Monuments Planning Project has received a notice of exemption for CEQA, and the County of Sacramento has submitted concept proposals for the acquisition and implementation phases of the project. In addition, we have one proposal for consideration today, agenda item 10, the Suisun City Public Fishing Dock Planning Project. Lastly, one amendment was approved earlier this morning as part of the consent calendar, the term extension for Southport Levee Recreational Trail Planning and Design Project. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions in the room? Seeing none, any online? Comment? None there either. All right. Thank you, ma'am. That brings us to the Delta Interagency Invasive Species Coordination Team update. Doc, you're on.
Good morning, board members. My name is Rachel Wigginton, and I'm a senior environmental scientist at the Delta Conservancy. And today I'll be covering agenda item 8, which is an update on the activities of the Delta Interagency Invasive Species Coordination Team. This agenda item begins on page 41 of your board packets. So as a little bit of background, the Delta Interagency Invasive Species Coordination Team, or DISC team, was formed in 2013 to provide a venue for things like the exchange of information, coordination of research and management, collective leveraging of funding, and other activities that are relevant to invasive species in the Delta. The Delta Conservancy provides dedicated staff time, and that's me, to facilitate this group, which is co-led by others, including Lauren Damon from the Delta Conservancy, and staff from the Department of Water Resources, the Delta Stewardship Council, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Though our CDFW co-leader actually recently transferred to the Delta Stewardship Council, and we're currently looking for a new CDFW collaborator. The team itself is represented by 20 different organizations ranging from state and federal agencies, nonprofits, to county and local governments. And all the members of this team have some role in studying, managing, detecting, and controlling invasive species. I actually last updated the board on DISC team activities in January of 2022, and since then, the DISC team has had many accomplishments. Most significantly, the DISC team hosted its 5th biennial Delta Invasive Species Symposium on November 30th, 2023. Since 2015, the DISC team has been planning and facilitating this biennial symposium, which is an important forum for Delta managers, researchers, decision makers, and also interested parties to meet, share, and synthesize information, as well as just to communicate best practices and lessons learned around the importance of managing invasive species in the Delta. This year's, or last year's, symposium took place at the California Natural Resource Agency's headquarters and was attended by 72 people in person and 156 additional folks via Zoom. Last year's symposium focused on connectivity with an emphasis on making ecological, social, and decision-making connections. The role of ecological connectivity itself is a major theme in the study of invasive species, and it's particularly relevant in the Delta, because the Delta connects uplands to the estuary, species and nutrients among ecosystems, and also water to the people of the Delta. So the symposium itself sought to explore how we can harness these connections among habitats, landscapes, agencies, researchers, and even local communities in our efforts to prevent, detect, manage, and control invasive species. The planning team for the 2023 symposium included myself, Lauren, and staff from the Delta Stewardship Council, the Department of Water Resources, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The planning team feels like the symposium was a really great success, and we've actually received a lot of positive feedback about the ability to gather together and network in person, and also the importance of the types of information that we were sharing during the symposium. In addition to the valuable efforts the planning team gave, Hope Miller at the Delta Conservancy, as well as staff from the Office of Public Participation at the Delta Stewardship Council, contributed significantly to the success of the event. In your board packet, descriptions of each different session and their specific themes can be found. Additionally, a recording of the entire symposium can be found on the Conservancy's YouTube page and is also linked in the annual report you saw earlier. And last, there is a link in the agenda item to a document with all the titles and abstracts which describe each of the presentations given at the symposium. So in 2024, the DISC team has its first meeting in February, and then we will continue to meet quarterly throughout the year. And during this year, we really hope to continue our work to advance early detection and rapid response to new invasive species. And also, we're hoping to assist the Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee's Restoration Subcommittee on their work, which is going to focus on invasive aquatic vegetation in restoration sites in the Delta. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody in the room?
I have a question. What did the makeup look of the folks that attended in person? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a really great question. So it was a whole lot of agency staff from state and federal agencies. I'd say that's the bulk of the people that attended. There were also several Delta community members there, which is really interesting. I think the owner of these was there, in addition to some other folks like interested parties. And academics from local agencies, or not agencies, local universities were there. So like students and professors. And then finally, some consultant type folks who are really like engaged in this sort of management. But I would say the majority was state and federal agency folks who are really on the ground doing invasive species management.
So I got a question on that. So could we do like a little mini version of that we could do a roadshow with? The reason I ask that is because when we do it there, a lot of times when you're trying to get your farmers and the folks that own the duck clubs and all those people to participate coming out midday to be able to go do that, take a day off work, that gets expensive. But if we can arrange to have a little dog and pony show that we can take somewhere like when the California Waterfowl Association has their big lunch out there at in Suisun Marsh. And literally every owner of every duck club in that entire marsh is there. You got a captive audience, you know, I'll just pull my truck across the bridge at the driveway. They can't get away. Right.
Lock them in.
And we give a presentation at things like that about the invasive species and how we need their partnership and participation in this and maybe sponsorship of some of these programs. It would be great. Go to the farm bureaus. You know, let's just take this on the road.
I think that's a great idea. We're certainly open to that. And any other groups that is aware. In fact, that's a great one, because as you say, they're all there.
Yeah, and they can't get away.
Yeah, we'll work through that.
Yeah, and one other thing I would mention is specifically the Suisun RCD was they attended. So there's another group that was there with some of the RCD folks. And specifically the Suisun RCD is collaborating with several different academics that presented on their work at the symposium. And one of the really interesting things that was presented is that landowners in Suisun Marsh, when they have questions about invasive species management, their most trusted advisors are the RCD. So just like an interesting nexus there. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea.
Yeah. Thank you, man. That brings us to the Delta Conservancy Implementation Plan Status Update and consideration of the 2024 implementation.
Great. Well, Chair Mashburn and members of the board, I'm excited to be here presenting the implementation plan for you this year. And this presentation will really mirror what Hope and Campbell were talking about early on. So you'll hear some of the same facts coming out again, but in a different format. So I'm excited this is part of my job. And why I'm really excited this is part of my job is that I get to be the one that sits here and brags about how amazing the staff is and how much they accomplished over the year. And I'm really proud of how dedicated they are, how much they've invested, and how willing they've been to adjust to kind of the varying circumstances that we've had over the last couple of years. So I'm excited that I get to be the person that does that. I also want to thank the team. They've done a great job of putting this implementation plan together. This was absolutely a team effort, and everyone went in and really helped bring this to you guys today. So I want to thank them for all of their work. So I'm going to talk just first about what the implementation plan is in general. So the implementation plan is our complement to the strategic plan. It really lays out the objectives that we're going to accomplish over the year. So specifically what are our objectives, it also summarizes our accomplishments of 2023. So we're going to look at both what we did last year as well as what's coming up this year. And then every year we bring the implementation plan to you guys today or in January for an adoption. And then again in July to do, or August, either one, to do a update on how far we've come and what we've been doing so that you guys have a sense of what we're doing and how we're doing towards that implementation plan. So just like last year's presentation that I got to give as well, I'm gonna be summarizing what happened in 2023, set our goals for 2024, and then ask for your approval of the 2024 implementation plan. So Hope did a very nice job of laying out our strategic plan, but I'll go ahead and give our goals again. This plan was adopted in 2022 and will run through 2027. And again, this is the high level guide for us, knowing that, you know, situations change as we've seen over the last year. They've definitely changed. We know that we have to be able to put an implementation plan in to complement those big high level goals, and they're the kind of broad strokes. So the 5 goals that the board has set are for conservation, for working lands, communities and economies, education and outreach, and internal operations. And then there's objectives and metrics for each of those items. So if you haven't had a chance to look at those, you should really go online and just, you know, read through our strategic plan and have a good sense of where we're at. So the implementation plan that we've put together for 2024 supports all of those goals. Okay, so now I'm going to run through our accomplishments from 2023. And also, as Hope mentioned at the beginning, I think the biggest accomplishment that we had was getting the NBS funding, the nature-based solutions funding out the door. And this is really a milestone moment for the Conservancy. Campbell and a whole number of people around the Delta have been working really hard to understand the science of how re-wetting can work, and also running pilot projects of, you know, kind of getting a sense of what this could mean. And this is this first moment where we've actually been able to take it to scale and start to think about this kind of landscape scale implementation of nature-based solutions. So this is a really, I think, a really big moment. I don't think we acknowledged it in October, like how big that moment was getting the funding out, but it really was a huge accomplishment that marks, you know, 12 plus years of work to get that funding out. It also was an accomplishment because we got that out the door in October, and December 10th-ish, we got the stop work order on all of these grants. So if we had delayed and dragged our feet any longer, that money wouldn't have made it out. So congratulations to everybody in the team, because I know it took an incredible amount of work to get all those proposals together. Congratulations on the timing of getting that out the door. We would have probably lost that funding. So I'm really excited about that. It also is a big moment because it will re-wet 11,000 acres by planting wetland and rice. And it's going to avoid the emission of 110,000 metric tons of carbon per year. So that's a big number, really, you know, a huge accomplishment that we're able to put on the landscape. Another big accomplishment, Hope also summarized with our outreach. We co-sponsored 2 Delta waterway cleanups. We hosted the Delta Invasive Species Symposium in November, helped co-host it. The Delta Restoration Forums in winter and fall that we've already talked about today. And then also did a really robust Delta Week in September. So got a lot of great community outreach. And I feel like this is kind of the revival from the pandemic, that all this kind of stuff got put on hold, and now we're able to actually come back out and really kind of reinvest in the community in that way. So it's a very exciting year for that. I also do want to highlight the DRIP program, which also got mentioned a little bit earlier today. But I'm excited about this moment too with the DRIP program, that we have, you know, 2 years worth of data that are kind of sitting there. We've been going through, kind of figuring this all out. And I think one of the cool things is, I feel like anyway, usually we're doing research that's just kind of reevaluating and saying, yeah, great job, and putting like kind of a rubber stamp on the things that we already know. And I think one of the exciting things about this is that we really don't know what the best use of funding is, and if water conservation is something that's attainable in the Delta. And so it's exciting to watch these results come out real time and figure out how we actually can have that impact, and what are some of those opportunities we can offer to farmers and ranchers if they want to participate in water conservation programs. So that's exciting, and we will see the plan of that coming out in just a couple months, or the report of that. And then we have a lot of internal things, which Campbell pointed out in the nice dashboard that he pointed out. And these are things that mean a ton to the staff, and I really want to acknowledge what a great job they've done. And I think sometimes when we hear the cumulative nature of what we've been doing, it's really rewarding and really boosts us or reminds us why we do the work. But Staff together has put together 6 projects, or they've awarded 6 projects along with the board for $40.3 million in funding. They've executed 73 new grant contracts and agreements, processed 452 invoices, processed 23 amendments, and closed 63 agreements. That is a tremendous amount of work that this very small team has put together. In addition to that, we've been working on our equity goals. So we created a diversity, equity, and inclusion action plan. We were able to exceed our small business contracting goals that are set at 25%. We went to 32%. So working on that. And then we also have been adopting new tools and software. So these things also disrupt our daily lives and are a huge thing for us to implement, because it really is a lot to adapt to. But we adapted the ServiceNow absence reporting and open enrollment, which changed how we do all of our reporting, which was a challenge. We've been helping to pilot the Raptor database, and we created a monitoring procedure for closed grants. So we've done a tremendous amount of work internally with this very small, nimble team that you see in front of you. So congratulations, everyone, for the work you've done. Okay, so that's what we've done over the year. So now I'm going to switch to our goals for next year. Hopefully we will do just as much, if not more. We're still running. So 2024, as I alluded to, is really different from 2023. And if we think back even just a year, we were worried about getting all the funding out the door. We hadn't gotten nature-based solutions out. We were really worried if we'd be able to find projects. We had just a huge amount of funding and new staff and just kind of chaos of trying to get all just really focused on this funding. And now we're in a very different point this year with, all of our funding for the most part expended, and we're worried a little bit more about whether we will have funding to continue this really important work. So a year makes a huge difference in what we're doing. And for us, that really changes the focus of our work. So in the upcoming year, we'll be looking at figuring out how to bring in additional funding. So both looking at federal funding, state funding, and local partnerships to be able to bring funding into our cause. But then also really turning to all these things that I think Hope highlighted really well in this annual report of what are all those ways that we're bringing value to the Delta without giving out funding, and how can we build on those and make those things more successful. So our team will be looking at that over the next year and building on those two goals collectively to see how we can have the biggest impact towards our mission. So with those two framings, our 2 strategies for 2024 are first to find more funding. And Campbell and I have been participating in Natural Resource Agency federal funding groups and talking to the Resources Agency about where we can find additional funding and what's the best way to do that. We've also been talking to federal legislators and looking for federal grant funds. We've been kind of seeing if anything shakes down out of those trees. It is, I've heard Wade speak, I think 3 times in the last 3 months, and that's his mantra now. It's just federal funding, federal funding. So we are not the only ones doing that, but I'm hoping that we will have some success in that. And then we're also supporting our grantees in finding additional funding as well. So helping them either with letters of support, or if we find opportunities, connecting them with those opportunities and looking for ways to really help them find funding. And then secondly, we're going to be looking to build purpose outside of our funding. So how do we build on all those things that we've already been talking about this morning? So these are all going to sound really familiar at this point, and they should. But we're going to continue our work of bringing the community together around invasive species and restoration needs, and continuing all of our forums and conversations. We're going to keep working on the Raptor database and making sure that we're able to provide that information to the folks that are looking at our numbers, but also helping that happen across the Natural Resources Agency. We're going to keep working collectively on subsidence and finding solutions and funding, and monitoring how our progress is happening with the 11,000 acres that we're putting in. We are looking at how we can hold easements, and we're in some beginning conversations with folks about, is there a way that we can hold easements within the Delta, and can we bring benefit? We are going to continue our Delta Week and cleanups. We're going to continue our DEI work and have more time to focus on that. Policies, trainings, and accountability, making sure that the Conservancy is upholding its end of state accountability to the constituents. And then we are going to be doing the final fish-friendly farming work. So that's coming out, and all the work that's been done over the last 3 or 4 years is going to come to an apex with all the acres being certified that we've been working on for 3 or 4 years. So that's going to be a big moment that we'll look forward to as well. Okay, so that was a lot of information. That's what we've been working on and will be working on. And so again, today we're here seeking approval from you all for the implementation plan. And then we will be back in 6 months to present this again and show you how much work we've accomplished towards these goals. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Public comment or questions? Seeing none, is there any online, any hands raised? See there either, so I'd be looking for a motion. Motion, do I have a second? I have a second. You get a vote.
Chairman Ashburn,
Aye.
Board Member Natal,
Aye.
Supervisor Patty,
Yes.
Member
Aye.
Board Member
Aye.
Deng.
Aye.
Yes. With 7 ayes, the motion carries.
Or thank Karen for taking the lead on producing all that this year and last year as well. Turned out great and look forward to implementing it all.
A lot of work, that's quite a work. All right, that brings us to consideration of award of community enhancement grant program funds for Suisun City public fishing dock planning.
That's what my script says, so that's what I'm saying. Does not say that. Okay, focus people. And follow up to the Community Enhancement Grant Program update, I'm pleased to present for board consideration a recommendation to award Proposition 68 funding to Suisun City Public Fishing Dock Planning Project with the City of Suisun City. This item can be found on pages 64 through 67 of your agenda. Conservancy staff recommends that the board approve up to $715,180 in grant funding for this proposal, the purpose of which is to complete 65% design plans, a site master plan, obtain permits, and to conduct community outreach for the Suisun City Public Fishing Dock. The overall purpose of the fishing dock is to create a sustainable and inclusive place for fishing and human-powered watercraft, which will promote tourism and environmental education throughout the region. The goals of Proposition 68 are to fund projects that promote recreation and tourism, historic and cultural preservation, and environmental education. As a community access and environmental education project, the Suisun City Public Fishing Dock Planning Project meets these program objectives. This project is located just outside the Delta boundaries. Per statute, in order for the Conservancy Board to consider a project outside the legal Delta, it must demonstrate that it implements the ecosystem goals of the Delta Plan and that it will provide significant benefits to the Delta. The project is located on the Suisun Slough and is hydrologically connected to the Suisun Marsh. Through the installation of interpretive signs, the project will educate the community about the Suisun Marsh ecosystem and its direct connection to the Delta. Furthermore, by adding an ADA accessible fishing dock and boat launch, the project will create a new recreational facility within a quarter mile of the marsh, yielding significant recreational and economic benefits to the Delta region. Additionally, after the creation of this staff report, the project received support from the Delta Protection Commission and the State Conservancy. In order to fund a project outside the Conservancy's jurisdiction, the board must approve these findings for the project site located outside of the legal Delta. This finding will be the first of the 2 motions required to approve the project. This project is not considered a project under CEQA, but does include required permits for the implementation of the project. It is also located in a severely disadvantaged community and is expected to support that community through increased economic activity, tourism, and access to the Suisun Marsh and Delta. Lastly, although Suisun City will not contribute cost share, the city has received significant feedback about the need for a public fishing dock, and it is expected that once built, the project will enjoy wide community support. To that end, the project received support letters from the Suisun City Business District, Virgil's Bay Shop, and the Solano Yacht Club. Our staff is pleased to recommend this project for board approval. There is suggested motion language for both of the motions at the bottom of the agenda item for your consideration. But before we proceed, I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Any comments or questions from anybody in the room? See no hands raised online. Anybody online? I'd like to make a couple of comments if I could. As a kid who grew up fishing on the banks of that particular piece of the slough, this would be a welcome addition. While you can still catch fish off the bank down there, the ability to access that is a little tough. And one of the other things that you'll notice if you go down there is that, you know, while people are well-meaning, when they're out there, they tend to have an impact on the environment around them. And so having a space that's been created where they don't destroy pieces of the marsh trying to get to a good fishing hole, and they don't have those impacts on that ecosystem down there is significant. And the other piece that I can tell you, not from being the kid that used to fish there, but from being a supervisor who supervises that area or is responsible for that district, is that we do have economically disadvantaged folks who don't have access to recreation in the Delta and they don't own a boat. They don't have a way to get there. And so having the signage and having the trails and having the fishing docks makes a difference for those economically disadvantaged communities and for kids who otherwise wouldn't be able to experience that or understand that. And so I'm very appreciative of the project, and I'm very appreciative of this organization's support of that project. So I thank you for your consideration on this vote. And with that, I don't have the language in front of me, but I would like to make the motion. Oh, I do have it now.
You can read the language if you'd like.
I got it right here. I can say, I would make a motion and move that the board approve findings for this project site located outside the legal delta for the Suisun City Public Fishing Dock Planning Project with the city of Suisun. And I would like to move that the board award funding up to $715,180 to the city of Suisun from the Proposition 68 Community and Economic Enhancement Grant Program for the Suisun City Public Fishing Dock Planning Project.
Second.
Thank you.
Would you like to second both motions?
Yes.
I do need to do a roll call for both of them, so I'm gonna do
Yes.
2 roll calls.
Did you guys do public comment?
Oh, public comment.
I thought I did that
Did
when
I?
I asked
Did you?
for it. But yeah, right before I said my
Okay.
comment, I asked for it. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I second.
And do we have
So
to do two?
yes. Motion for the findings. Chair Mashburn,
Yes.
Board Member Natoli,
Aye.
Supervisor Patty. He's there.
Who's there?
Supervisor Patty.
Are you there, Tom?
I'll come back. Board Member Pro.
Fine.
Yes, I'm sorry, I had technical difficulties here.
Thank you. That was an eye. I got you on the eye. Board Member Vogel.
Aye.
Board Member-
So I'm an aye on that as well. I apologize.
Aye.
Board Member Marksman.
Yeah.
Okay, and on the second motion to award the funding, Chair Mashburn,
Aye.
Board Member Natoli,
Aye.
Supervisor Patty.
Yes,
I hope you can hear me. I don't mean to yell. Board Member Pro.
Aye.
Board Member Vogel.
Aye.
And Board Member Udang.
Aye.
And Board Member Matsumoto.
Yes.
We have 7 votes on both motions carry.
Hey, thank you all very much for that.
Before we move on, can I invite the city of Suisun City to say a quick comment here? I'm gonna just remember.
First of all, thank you. My name is Chris Loftus. I'm the deputy city manager for Suisun City. This has been a project that's been in my brain for about 4 or 5 years. And without this opportunity, it would probably still be in my brain. Trying to figure out a way to make this happen for our residents. We've not been down to that area. Right across the street is low income housing that will directly be
have a benefit on those folks so that we can engage them, bring them across, teach them how to fish, teach them about the Delta, teach them, there are other things to do than play video games. That's, we're from the Recreation Parks and Marina Department. That's our goal, is to get people engaged and get them outside and get them acclimated to the way I grew up hunting, fishing, exploring, backpacking. That's what we're trying to do for our community in Suisun City.
Thank you. And thanks for bringing this project. All right, that brings us to the update on reorienting to recovery Central Valley Salmon Project recovery project.
Can everyone in the room hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So hi, everyone. Thank you for letting us join your call today. My name is Marlis, and I am with the consulting firm Kearns & West. Some of you may know me, my name at least. You may have gotten emails from me. I'm joined by my colleagues Darcy Austin from the State Water Contractors and Gary Bobker with the Bay Institute today, and we're going to give a brief presentation. We'll try to keep it pretty short about the Reorienting to Recovery effort, which is something that a lot of the people in this room probably have heard a presentation in the past about, and we're here to give an update. So I see Darcy and Gary are on the call. I will start sharing my screen with our presentation, and they can take it away. So give me one quick second to figure out which screen to share. Are you seeing the presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Darcy, take it away.
All right, thanks, Marlis, and hi, everybody. Good morning, Campbell. Good morning, Karen. I haven't seen you guys for a while. My name's Darcy Austin. I am the science manager for the State Water Contractors, and we are here today, as Marlis said, to give you an update on this work. And if you've been tracking it, you've probably heard about it before, but today we'll give you a little bit more details on the project itself and also where we are. We want to encourage participation. There's going to be forum meetings coming up in April. You may have seen those recently in February, but those were rescheduled recently. And then we also want to be able to answer any questions that you have. Go ahead, next slide. So this is a pretty big effort. It's taken a lot of folks, and it's taken folks from, it's been interesting taking folks from sort of these disparate viewpoints or potentially disparate viewpoints. But it really has benefited from all of us working together and pushing together towards the same goal. So this first phase here was really about defining salmon recovery. That happened in 2021. And that was really the beginning of this. We wanted to engage scientists and have them help us develop a framework for defining salmon recovery. And so this is a structured decision-making process, and part of a structured decision-making process is to include values. And so the scientific framework needed to be paired with values from stakeholders throughout the valley. And again, it's sort of people that you would not expect necessarily to be working together. So we had fisher people, we had tribes, we had the PWAs, we had environmental groups and the agencies working together on this. Most of that work took place in 2022. So that was our second phase. Last year, and then, well, starting in 2023 and moving into 2024, there was an emphasis on continuing to engage stakeholders, to get additional input, and then to model baseline and benchmark scenarios. So you may remember them if you've been tracking this as bookend scenarios. Gary's going to give you a little bit more detail on where we are on that, so I won't say anything else, but we've evolved from bookends to some blended scenarios, and more balanced scenarios is what we're seeking. And then again, most of this work will continue to take place through 2024. And ultimately, our goal, the goal of this effort, is to identify a suite of actions intended to achieve recovery. And we're still on our way to completing this. Next slide. All right, and so already mentioned, we have a number of forums of folks that we've engaged. And again, these disparate views end up making the outcomes and the products much better because they can reflect reality, a broader reality. And so we engaged a number of groups. We've met with 14 groups individually, and but there's these different levels. So we have the forum, and that's all interested parties. And that's where we want to make sure that all of the values that everybody brings to the table are shared. And then they also provide feedback on deliverables. We also have this structured decision-making working group. That's a subset of the forum. And those folks help to develop and define those scenarios and then seek to reach agreement on a recommendation, which, as you can imagine, can be difficult with these disparate groups, but still works pretty well together, this group. On the science advisory team, we have technical experts and experts with traditional ecological knowledge. And from that group, we want to get advice on technical issues. So again, there's a little bit more detail. Gary's gonna go next and provide you with additional detail on that, and then we will take questions at the end. Next slide.
Great. Thanks, Darcy. Can you hear me all?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Great, yeah. For some reason, my camera was disabled for this meeting. I don't know if that's on your end, but you're not missing anything. So as as Darcy said, we got to this place by going through a 3-step SDM process. We're now in the formal SDM part of the process. And what we're doing, the tools that we're using in order to do the evaluation, the analysis of potential alternatives, essentially combines 2 things. The first is the values that Darcy referred to, the combination of both the science-driven salmon recovery metric values, and then all the other social, ecological, cultural, economic values that are also associated with salmon recovery or somehow affected by it. And we developed a list. We started out with hundreds of values and hundreds of associated metrics. We boiled that down to 18 values expressed in 34 metrics. And then those metrics are used to guide the outputs we're looking for from the models we're using. And we're essentially relying on 2 models, the CVPIA SIT model and the NIMS winter run life cycle model, with some adjustments made in order to be able to look at a broader set of outputs than those models were intended to be used for. They're compatible with the use of those models. It's just that those models were basically used to look at narrower results related to implementation of CVPIA and ESA, and we're looking more broadly than that, obviously, with full recovery. So using those models, we go through 3 large iterations. Well, actually 4. The first being the baseline, making sure that we have the right baseline that we're using to measure performance of the scenarios against. And then the next was the development of what we called bookend scenarios. And bookend scenarios were not intended to be anything like a real world evaluation. It's basically testing the models and seeing what kind of results we get when we just use the main knobs that we have in management that are reflected in the model, in the models, and seeing what that does, and using that as a way to educate all of us about how to use the models and kind of what you get if you took a one knob only approach. So the bookend scenarios essentially take the levers or knobs that you can move, which basically we'd been into hydrologic regimes, amount of habitat, level of harvest, and hatchery production. And then we created scenarios that essentially do those all the way up, and in some cases all the way down. So we have the scenarios that look at how much habitat you could have if you basically had all the habitat you could in the Central Valley, absent, say, flooding major urban areas or communities. What would happen if you stopped harvesting, any commercial or recreational fishery for salmonids? What would happen if you just turned off hatchery production? In contrast, what would happen if you doubled hatchery production? What would happen if you essentially turned off the CVP and SWP exports? And then what would happen if you turned off those exports plus exports and diversions plus the maximum habitat? So let's go to the next slide. And, this is an example of the kind of output you get using those models for the those 6 different scenarios. And, not surprisingly, they all did a little better than status quo, but not a lot. And that's because when you are only relying on one knob, you are a lot less resilient to extreme conditions. And as you can see very obviously that when it gets drier, all of everything, our status quo and bookend scenarios crash. Let's go to the next slide. So, these results, like I said, these are bookend scenarios to test the model. And the findings are no, this is not rocket science. We all could have sort of guessed what would happen, that, if you have sort of maximum flows with our current system, they'll create benefits for salmonids in most years, but in, runs of dry years, the system would crash. If you, only rely on habitat, then you have problems with things like, adequate flow conditions and temperature issues. If you, only rely on hatchery production, you have problems both with hydrology and habitat, but you also have problems with the effects on wild fish populations, et cetera. So, there are obvious lessons to be learned, but part of the SDM is to make sure that we're all sort of learning and studying these things together in order to build for the, for the next round. Let's go to the next slide. So I said there were 4 iterations. We've done the baseline and the bookend scenarios. Now we're sort of going to, the next iteration is blended scenarios. And the idea behind blended scenarios is to try and start optimizing these scenarios so that you start taking elements from each of the knobs, kind of the way you would do it in the real world, and see what combinations of hydrologic regime, habitat expansion, hatchery production, and harvest regulation, what combinations work best to achieve the salmonid recovery goal. And so in the upcoming forum workshop and then the SDM work group meetings that will follow, we'll look at initial results of balanced scenario, of blended scenarios, and see what kind of changes we want to make in order to address some of those obvious findings that we got from the last round. Things like, how do you reconcile maximizing hatchery production in order to really boost the commercial fishery, which, as you know, is in serious trouble with closures, et cetera. But how do you do that at the same time as preserving and restoring the genetic diversity and abundance of the wild fish populations. How would you modify a hypothetical ideal flow regime in order to accommodate the need to preserve conditions during very dry conditions, extended drought periods, in order to benefit salmon? Same issues we deal with in the real world. You know, how can you use habitat, not just, you know, in the sense of productivity throughout a whole bunch of conditions, but as refugia for salmonids in really dry years when flows are are going to be constrained. So those are the kinds of issues we want to dive into in order to go through the blended scenario. Sorry, I keep saying that, the balanced scenario development. And then following that, the final iteration is balance scenarios. And what balance scenarios is, once you've sort of optimized these various scenarios for recovering salmonids, then, you know, what kinds of other impacts, you know, the real world impacts of doing that in terms of, you know, the impacts of flow and habitat restoration, et cetera, or hatchery production, whatever it is. You know, what are the conflicts? What are the trade-offs? What are the synergies between salmonid recovery and socioeconomic impacts, for instance? So the idea being that at the end of this process, we have, in an ideal world, 1, in the world we live in, more likely 3 scenarios that achieve salmonid recovery in a balanced way, and have had the participation of enough parties that actually are going to implement elements of salmonid recovery in order to actually make it feasible and realistic that this stuff might happen, rather than just be another set of findings in a report that sits on a shelf. So that's the process. That's the steps that we're currently engaging on. That's where we hope to wind up. So why don't I stop here? If Darcy and Marlis have anything to add, do so, and then maybe we can open it up to your questions.
Thank you, Gary. I was just going to wrap up this presentation briefly for the room by noting that we do have this forum meeting that Gary just spent the last slide discussing coming up on April 3rd. It's an all-day meeting. It will be virtual, and most of you or your constituents, people in your network, have received this notification. If you did not, feel free to email me. We have a calendar hold already, and the following week is the back-to-back SDM work group meetings. So if you're in the SDM group, you should have been invited to those meetings as well. It would be on April 9th and 10th. And here's Gary's face. Yeah. So yeah, all the questions that were kind of posed throughout this presentation will be addressed at those meetings. We would really like to see you there so we can get all perspectives and representation from your groups. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. My colleague Rafi, who's also on this call, you may have received emails from him in the past. We are happy to answer any questions you may have. So I think with that, I will stop sharing my screen. And then I don't know how much time we're allowed to take in this meeting, but anyone has like a lingering question or two, we're happy to answer. Otherwise, thank you for your time.
Are there any questions from any board members or folks in the room? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations. It's, you don't typically see the state water contractors and the Banking Institute working together. And I'm happy to see it. And I really love the alliteration, you know, the habitat harvest, hatcheries and hydrology, and that I hadn't thought of it.
Hey, Nancy, you missed the baseline bookend blended and balanced too.
Yeah, you've got a poet on your team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have any online questions or comments? Public comment, none. I do have a couple of questions, if I might. In the look that you guys have made so far on this, were the developments that we have and the restorations that we have in place or taking place considered with regard to the habitat look? When I say that, what I mean is our Cashew Complex and our Little Egbert Slough are going to add 4,000 acres of habitat for your baby salmon to hold in for a couple of years if need be. And I wanted to see if that was part of the consideration from the scientists in the room when when they were looking at this, and the fact that they're going to have that additional habitat, and that the state is also looking at potentially up to 9,000 acres of habitat and habitat restoration that would be really supportive of the salmonoid population.
I can try to take a stab at this one. And hi, everybody. My name's Rafi. I'm with Kearns and West and also a member of the planning team. I can't seem to turn on my camera, but I'll just say when we were going out and at the start of phase 2 to solicit input from everybody and get their values, one of the things that we did was to develop a project catalog of all the current and planned and potential projects that are on somebody's book somewhere. And then when we were developing that baseline scenario, we developed a criteria for kind of what's the cutoff between this is actually, you know, in the works versus this might happen someday, maybe. And so we incorporated everything that seemed like it was either currently, you know, happening or had, I think, you know, some measure of confidence that it was going to be happening very, very soon because it had full funding, permits, et cetera. So I don't know particularly the project that you mentioned. I'd have to go back to the project catalog to see, you know, kind of where that fell off. I think, you know, a lot of the work that we would be doing at the end of this, assuming we're able to reach agreement and kind of start looking towards what would implementation look like, would be going back out to specific regions and trying to figure out, okay, of the projects that are in that more kind of planned space that may or may not happen, you know, what's the reality there? What would it take to make them happen? If they were to happen, what would the delta be versus, you know, kind of what the suite of recovery actions that we reached agreement on says would be necessary, and kind of developing that out by region to kind of paint a more accurate picture of, okay, you know, this region would need to do this much more. This region is actually meeting, you know, kind of the targets based on that recommended suite of actions. That would be, you know, sometime in the future. There's a lot of ifs before we get there, but that's kind of the work that we did there. I don't know if other folks wanted to add to that.
Just to say that, yeah, I mean, those projects are in our project catalog. There's not much question about that.
I just wanted to make sure that those projects were on your radar and that you had a voice right now at the table in some form or fashion, because we don't have years on those. Those are in the works right now. And so if you folks want to have a say in how that habitat is formed and want to have a say in the way that it is put together so that it best benefits salmonoids, now is the time, not years from now. And then the second piece is, as one of the policymakers who has direct input and would be directly affected and have my region directly affected by proposed policies and proposed supports for the salmonoid population, I'd like to be engaged, but I would like to know that this is the first I've heard of this and that it's going on. And so I would highly recommend that you reach out to those policymakers who would be affected so that they can be part of the process instead of part of the opposition. Because when we start talking about flows and changing the flows and as you were talking about earlier with impacts to groups, socioeconomic impacts, when we talk about changing flows, when we talk about changing habitat and all those things, that affects a region like mine where agriculture is the second largest economic driver in my county. It could be a significant impact if you change the water flows in my creeks and the amount of take that my residents can have at their intakes. So let us be part of the conversation and the solution, not part of the opposition, I guess is what I'm getting at. And we would appreciate that. So, thank you.
Yeah, let me just start, and Ralph, you may want to add to this, just two things I'll note. The first is just important for everybody to realize that this is not a regulatory or negotiated decision-making process. We have very deliberately decided not to be associated with any decision-making process in order to ensure the neutrality of this process. So, you know, at the end of the day, this is an exercise that comes up with recommendations or potentially a set of dueling recommendations, you know, because I mentioned the idea that there might be three scenarios, and then it's really going to rely on having a broad base of support in order for anything that we come up with to happen. So that's sort of how we designed the process. And then the other thing I'll say is that, you know, with all apologies that we're not aware of this, we actually have made, we reached out to literally, you know, hundreds of different groups, networks, and organizations, and have really tried to make sure that both the forum, and the SDM work groups are as inclusive as possible. And you know, so the people that are involved in the process represent people with very different interests. You know, agricultural users, fishermen, tribal interests, water users, other water users, government agencies, NGOs, et cetera. So, you know, that, you know, the potentially competing concerns of all these different interests are kind of at the heart of what the process is all about, and trying to reconcile those issues. And Rafi, I don't know, Rafi or Marlis, I don't know if you want to add just on our outreach efforts.
Yeah, just, you know, if we haven't been in front of you before, apologies. I think we've tried to say everywhere we've gone, you know, who else should we talk to? And we are absolutely happy to get in front of anybody and everybody who will have us. You know, the success of this endeavor is entirely based on, you know, the input that we receive, both in terms of the values that we collected and in terms of people weighing in on different actions and talking through the trade-offs. You know, if there's any hope of kind of, you know, this leading anywhere, it's going to be that we have the broadest support possible for, you know, the actions at the end of this effort. So yeah, you know, the good news is that up until this point, we've been in a very kind of theoretical, esoteric, abstract kind of a space, and it's right at this April 3rd meeting that I think we're going to be getting very real for the first time, and looking at these blended scenarios that are not kind of fanciful, you know, if we twist the knob to 11, where does that get us? But you know, kind of real world conditions. And so if you haven't been engaged, or if you know, heard about this a couple years ago and kind of have been loosely following it, April 3rd is a great chance to you know, get your feet dirty with this project. So please come, please bring your skepticism or you know, anything else. We welcome it, and it'll make it you know, better for having you there. So please come.
Thank you. Any other questions for him? Seeing none. Thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
All right, take care.
Brings us to our Echo Restore update.
Charlotte online?
She had said she wouldn't be available till 10:45,
Yeah.
so we can skip.
You want to?
Yeah.
All right, then let's go to the Delta Stewardship Council.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Chair Mashburn. Apologies for not being there in person this morning. I think it's been a while since the council provided an update, and we've been busy. So I'm going to cover just a few highlights, but they really represent kind of the broad range of the work that the council is currently, you know, very active in. First, late last year, we welcomed a new interim Delta lead scientist, Dr. Lisa Marie Windham-Myers, is a systems ecologist with the U.S. Geological Survey. She received her PhD from Rutgers University in ecology, evolution, and natural resources, and was a university professor before joining the USGS. Her research examines processes at the interface of land and aquatic systems, including water flow, storage, and quality at landscape scales. And she's extensively studied the conditions in wetlands and estuaries that sequester and release greenhouse gases and control methylmercury dynamics. Dr. Wyndham Meyer's term will conclude on June 30th of this year. So between now and then, the Council and the Delta Independent Science Board will be selecting the next Delta lead scientist. Next, last November, in partnership with the Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee agencies, we released the fiscal year 2021-2022 Delta Crosscut Budget Report. This annual reporting of science and habitat expenditures implements a process for collecting data and includes contributions from most of the 18 DPIC agencies, including the Conservancy, as well as contributions from water agencies. And this is the fourth year we've been collecting and synthesizing data, still collecting more years of data to really start to see trends and to see how we can use this to help try and increase funding for science and habitat. But glad to be able to continue to pull together this report and to share it with all agencies and all organizations working in the Delta. Next, on January 1st, the amended Delta Levees Investment Strategy, known as DLIS, became California state law. DLIS is a tool that the state uses to prioritize investments in Delta levee operations, maintenance, and improvements. The amendment assigns very high, or other priority to islands or tracts within the Delta and Suisun Marsh and directs the California Department of Water Resources to fund levee improvement projects by order of the priority. Additionally, it requires DWR to submit an annual report to the council describing Delta levee investments relative to the established priorities. And I believe they submitted a report late last year as well, which is available on the council's website. Registration is currently open for the March 26th and 27th Salinity Management Workshop. This is a 2-day virtual workshop. It's designed to discuss tools and strategies and to identify knowledge gaps for adaptively managing ocean saltwater intrusion in the Delta. It's a free workshop as well, and it's going to include presentations from researchers on the human dimensions of salinity management and on modeling tools to assess the impacts of various management actions. And finally, the council's January meeting is tomorrow at the California Natural Resources Building. On deck is the release of our annual report. This, like yours, is a digital story map formatted report that includes audio quotes from council partners as well as council staff. And this also includes a quote from Campbell. And then we're also going to have an update from the Delta Independent Science Board Chair, Lisa Wanger. And then actually just one other thing, I want to thank Campbell for mentioning the DPIC Delta Restoration subcommittee. It's really been great to be working in collaboration with the Conservancy in particular on kind of the development and really the implementation of the subcommittee and the restoration forums that we have been hosting. So thank you for that. So more information about everything I mentioned is available on the council's website. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions in the room? Or any questions online from the public? I don't see any. All right, thank you, ma'am. We appreciate that. All right, we're getting right through it. That brings us to the Delta Protection Commission update.
Sure, thank you. Couple things. We're excited about the Delta Leadership Program is up and running again. First seminar was January 12th here in Sacramento. We have 15 brand new participants that are getting to learn a little bit more about the Delta and about each other and about some leadership development skills. And we're really excited about that. Our program coordinator for that is our newest addition, hired annuited. You might recognize him. It's Eric Vink. Eric came to me right after I started. He says, I'd really like to continue to work on this in some capacity. And I said, it's all yours. So that was an easy call. He does a great job of that. Both Eric and I are graduates of the California Agricultural Leadership Program. Both of us have worked extensively with Mike Campbell as a result of that. So Mike and Eric really helped coordinate that program and put it together. So we're excited. 15 fantastic participants. So that's really good. Other staff news, we have a new senior environmental planner, Mike Avina, just started here last week. And we're excited about his addition to our team. And Heather McClure is our new clerk for our board. So we've had some positions open for a while and finally worked through DGS to get those positions filled. Saying DGS, that's the good news, is we will formally be working with DGS no longer in nope, it looks like March. We're going over to state parks and their HR people. So we're excited about that too. It's some change needed there, and it did happen. So Delta Protection Commission met last week in Sacramento, our action plan as well. We had our approval of that plan. Also added a new member of DPAC to our Delta Protection Advisory Committee. This person was mentioned earlier. His name is Jerry Goody of Wimpy's Marina. We still are looking for a tribal representative, and so we have that ongoing solicitation out there. And as soon as we get some people, and we'll select a tribal representative to also join our DPAC group. Let's see here, signs, the bane of our existence.
Say it like it's a dirty word.
It's been an interesting process for me coming new to state service to figure out that it takes 3 years to put in 11 signs. And we're not there yet. And we do have some movement though. We completely shifted gears because bottom line is we had a contract, I won't say with who, but they weren't getting the job done. They just simply couldn't allocate the resources to put signs in the ground. Sacramento County, or the Sacramento office of Caltrans, has now agreed to put in the 2 remaining signs in Sacramento County. So we have the one in Yolo County's up. We have the one in Sacramento County up. And then it gets to San Joaquin County office, District 10 of Caltrans. The signs that have been approved and been installed all over the Delta that say exactly the same thing, they don't like those signs and they won't approve their installation. So we have 5 signs sitting in San Joaquin County's Caltrans office, and they're just sitting there. So we're looking at other alternatives again. Their director was on our Delta Protection Commission board, Dennis Agar. He just retired, unfortunately. And I have a feeling if Dennis was still there, they'd be in the ground by now. But as soon as we get to a new person, we're going to try that avenue. We may go to reclamation districts if we have to. We may go to anybody and say, we're going to put these things in the ground somewhere. So that signage program, like I said, has been stalled and restalled, and we're going to get it moving again, and we're going to get some advancement. But Sacramento County signs, or the Sacramento office, Caltrans, is supposed to get those in here. They said after the first of the year, so we'll see what that means. NHA management plan, they're working through the final draft. It'll be released for public review here soon. So I can't tell you exactly what soon means just yet, but there is going to be an NHA management plan. We're excited about this, and that'll lead to a marketing plan. That'll lead to more access to federal funds. And this is something that's going to be tremendous for all of our folks. So look forward to that. There'll be, like I said, a public comment period, in-person hearing for sure, probably an online one as well. And we want people to have a chance to have their say in this. And then we have to move this on to the Park Service for their final approval. So look for that coming out here momentarily. And the other thing we're going to need in that process, and from groups like this and your groups that you represent, we're looking for support letters or commitment letters, and not, we're not going to hold you to it, but to say, we think we can partner with you, the Delta Protection Commission and Delta residents, on these aspects of the management plan. So we'll be getting that. If you don't have it already, shoot me a card or shoot me an email. We'll get you that information. I'll get Blake or Mike to get that information over to you and the types of letters that we're looking for. So that needs to move forward, as well as the management plan when we submit that to the National Park Service. So with that, let's see. Covered that. Next DPAC meeting will be at the Stockton Sailing Club on the 6th of February. NHA, we're not sure the location, but more than likely the 8th of February. And Delta Protection Commission March meeting will be at the Willow Ballroom in Hood. All I have.
Any questions in the room?
Quick question. On the management plan, when it's submitted to the Park Service, any idea, the Department of Interior has to sign off on it? How long, any idea what point in time it takes? Because
no,
subsequent to that, then you'll have some funding opportunities potentially for, for other activities that are under that management plan, so.
The good news is the regional office of the Park Service has been reviewing it every step of the way.
Very good.
So that much.
That helps advance.
Yeah, that helps advance it. But one of the people that's on our team retired from the DC Office of Park Service. So the person that's helping write the plan is kind of familiar. So we're hopeful it doesn't take that long.
Yeah.
We do know we have some friends in Congress that would certainly, Mr. Garamendi would be more than happy to make a contact there, and we're well aware of that. And hopefully it doesn't come to that, but if we need to shove it along a little bit, we're happy to do that.
Okay, good. Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, are there any online? Any hands raised? All right, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Brings us to our Delta Conveyance update.
Good morning. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Chair Mashburn. My name is Janet Barbieri, and I work on communications for the Delta Conveyance Project. And I'm here speaking on behalf of Carrie Buckman. She had a conflict today, so I'm speaking for her. So thank you very much. A pretty brief update from us. You are probably aware, but in case anyone hadn't heard, we did certify our final environmental impact report in December. And that was after the comment period for the draft environmental impact report, which you probably also remember was back in 2022. That was a 142-day comment period, and it might be of interest that we received about 729 letters and other types of communication, and there were about 7,300 individual comments covering a pretty broad range of policy and environmental technical topics. So that was certified in December. And the things that are coming up for us in 2024, we do expect to see the final EIS to satisfy the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, from the Army Corps of Engineers in probably early 2024. We will also start working on other permitting processes, including the state and federal Endangered Species Acts, the State Water Resources Control Board for our change in point of diversion, and our community benefits program. The other thing of note in 2024 is probably mid-year, I'm not sure exactly on the timing, we will have a revised cost estimate, a revised cost benefit analysis. So that'll be coming. So that's it, pretty brief update, but I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Any questions in the room? Seeing none, are there any questions online? See any hands raised either? All right, thank you very much, ma'am. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, we want to go back. Is Miss Biggs online by chance?
No,
No.
we're just too quick for her.
We're going too fast. All right, well, then you're gonna have to sing and dance or something. You could want potential agenda items. Yeah.
We don't have much there. So I spoke with Charlotte and basically said if she can't make it in time, we could certainly get an update at our March meeting. She said her day would be very.
All right, she may be able to send something out to the group via email. Oh.
So for potential agenda items for March, really at this point, just have consideration of award of community enhancement grants and amendments to existing agreements. So this is really an opportunity for the board to mention anything that they're interested or aware of that they would like. And I'm sure we'll come up with more to present to you in March as well.
Thank you. All right, that was, and that brings us to one last shot of public comment. Anybody have anything they want to bring? Anybody online? One once, one twice. All right, then we are adjourned. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate it.